Welcome, everyone, to Beyond Respite as a Service. Respite care does not have to cost money. It's being provided by the PA Care Partnership Grant in association with the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, OMSAS for short. At any time during the presentation, please type your questions into the Q&A feature, which you will find by running your mouse along the bottom of your Zoom screen. We are continuing with a town hall format to allow our attendees to actively participate and be seen and heard if you would like. When you put your questions in the Q&A, please let us know if you would like to ask your questions live with audio and/or video. Today's moderators are part of the PA Care Partnership. You have myself, Jamal Ford. I will be monitoring the Q&A. We have Nancy Massey, who will be monitoring the chat. And we would normally have our grant director, Mark Durgan, but he is not with us today. And I will kick it over to Nancy.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you're all here. Today, we're going to talk about personal support and maintaining your own health are essential to managing your responsibilities as a caregiver. Utilizing respite care before you become exhausted, isolated, or overwhelmed can be invaluable to everyone concerned. It is said that simply anticipating regularly scheduled relief can be an emotional lifesaver. And it doesn't have to cost money. Today, our speaker, Betsy MacMichael from First and Families of North Carolina, is here to tell you her story of how she turned a small group of advocates into a statewide organization, offering free respite care to families with children with mental health diagnosis and other disabilities. Betsy is the executive director of First and Families of North Carolina, has worked in the field of intellectual developmental disabilities in North Carolina for 21 years, dedicating her efforts to promoting self-determination, inclusion, and positive awareness in the community, whether in a service or policy context. First in Families complements the formal service system to meet the needs of over 2,400 families or individuals each year in North Carolina, particularly those receiving service, particularly those not receiving services, or those whose critical needs do not fit the usual service array. Betsy holds a master's degree in economics and tropical aquaculture. As a parent, Betsy has promoted and created inclusive options for her daughter, Janie, and with her daughter, Janie, as an adult since Janie was 2 years old. Janie currently lives in the North Street neighborhood of Durham, a very inclusive, non-programmed, intentional community in downtown North Carolina. I give you Betsy MacMichael.
Hey, everyone. Today, I would like to explore with you just some new ways to think about respite. First, I want to thank Nancy and Jamal for having me here, for inviting me. It's really great to be getting back to some national meetings, coming out of the pandemic. And I welcome you here today. I'm going to share what I'm going to share mainly through stories and some short videos, although I'm going to talk for a little bit at the beginning. And I know that we'll have plenty of time for questions and comments and so forth. I just have to do a sidebar that I grew up in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, where we say hi instead of hey to everybody. So it's nice to have a bunch of Pennsylvanians. Before I start, I have a question for y'all. Just to be thinking about, you don't have to answer here, but my question is, do you ever feel like you need respite from yourself? So, I mean, like to get out of your own way, to stop the wheels from turning, hold on to that thought, and we'll circle back later on. As Nancy said, First in Families assists maybe 24 to 2,500 families each year who are impacted by intellectual developmental disabilities or traumatic brain injury and/or mental health challenges. So there's a lot of overlap. We're not a Medicaid provider by choice. Over the years, we've considered whether we wanted to do that or not. And we help people of any age at all, from birth through, 101. Our original and current vision is that people with disabilities and other challenges and their families have a lot to contribute to the community, while at the same time needing help now and then to meet life's challenges and to go beyond meeting the challenges to reach their self-defined goals and dreams. We also believe and act on the fact that communities are really rich in resources. Granted, urban is easier than rural, but we see that communities are rich in resources, often untapped, as well as generosity. Sometimes people come to us really, really, beaten down from any number of types of life experiences and types of crises. We are sometimes a very last resort. I don't know about Pennsylvania, but here in North Carolina, most people with disabilities do not get any kind of services at all. The Medicaid waiver is not an entitlement. As some of you probably know, if you're involved with the IDD side of things, there's a huge and growing wait list, greater than the number of people actually getting any sort of help, which is pretty astonishing. Here it's about 13 or 14,000 people getting some kind of service, and 15 to 16,000 that have been on wait lists on the average over 10 years. Plus we have people moving into the state all the time, and you know that they have family members with mental health or disability challenges too, just like any group of people. So you might imagine that people call us and they ask how to get connected to resources. Sometimes. And we can link people to to services and agencies, as well as the next helping organization, or to a wait list. But no, usually they call and they say something like, "What do y'all help with?" Fair question, but it's a tough answer because we don't have a menu of services. We don't have a brochure that says we do this, that, and that on purpose. So it all begins with a conversation. We have several innovative programs, but the bread and butter of what we do is our support through regional First in Families chapters. So here are a couple recent examples of support requests that I've approved in the last month or so. Wesley is a 5-year-old little boy with autism being raised by his great-grandmother, Deborah. They've lived in an apartment for the last 5 years. They moved into a home built for them by Habitat. And Deborah reached out to First in Families for assistance with a fence for her yard so that Wesley has a safe place to run and play. She had some money saved for this, but not enough. Henson Fence Company is donating the rest of the money towards building and constructing the fence. So we serve as sort of the brokers who tell the story and get the discounts and donations happening. And by the way, on the side, awareness is built each and every family that we help, just of how normal and typical people impacted by these challenges are, as well as the kinds of difficulties they face. Here's another one. Robert's a 17-year-old young man with cerebral palsy. He lives with his sister and his mom, who has a traumatic brain injury. Robert wants to learn how to drive and to get a license. He wants the independence of driving to and from school and appointments. This is becoming more and more important as his mother's health declines. First in Families coordinated for him, or is in the process of coordinating, an occupational therapist and a driver rehab specialist to determine if he is able to be a driver, and they determine he can with adaptive modifications to the car. So with a purchase by us of less than $200, Robert is now the driver of the family. So what do these have to do with respite? When my now 29-year-old daughter with significant disabilities was about 4, the first case manager we met said, "Do you all need respite services?" I had no idea. I hadn't really ever heard of that. I knew life was hard, but respite from who? Her from us from her from clueless preschool teachers or bullying kids. The whole thing seemed like a strange idea. I didn't really get it. Respite for us, for my family, ended up being a relationship with some horsey people that noticed that Janie, my daughter, didn't get scared on the horse like some of the other kids during this was a church, a side activity for children, that she didn't get scared like the other kids. Could I have the next slide, please? Or a slide, please? And they invited Janie to take a lesson at no cost. For the next 10 years, until Riesling the horse became too old, Peter and Martha Klopfer took her on trail rides and in the ring for lessons every single Sunday while we hung out and did our thing. They taught her how red-stemmed maples are deadly to horses, even though they love them. So she's clomping along and the horse wants to eat the maples, and she learns that they're toxic. They also taught her that that you're not a true rider until you've fallen 3 times. So you know what that was about, the falls that she had. They respected her immensely. We can wait a second until we resolve the I'll describe to you. The slide is a picture of Janie kissing her horse, and she's standing there with her walker. Oh yeah, that was me asking you if you had ever wanted respite from yourself. So we can move to the next one. The next slide, please. And the next one. There's Janie and Riesel. For Wesley's family, having a fenced yard where he could safely run and play regularly and freely was more impactful than the Band-Aid fix of someone coming into the home for a few hours a month. For Robert, the driver, the freedom to drive and contribute to his family's shopping needs and transportation to appointments very likely impacts everyone's mental health more than a paid respite provider would. So First in Families does track categories of what we help with, and we have 35 buckets or so that fall into the definition of the social determinants of health. These are the proven factors that insurance companies and others know about, the factors that drive actual health more than clinical care does, more than getting to the appointments, doing preventive care. These other factors, like whether you have transportation, and the other factors among 35 that we track, these impact health more. In our state of North Carolina, they are currently, the DHHS people are currently emphasizing the priority importance of 5 of these areas: housing, transportation, food insecurity, interpersonal violence, and toxic stress. And so we, First in Families, also aggregate our 35 subcategories into these 5 buckets when there's a good fit, so that we can report to the state on that, and in the ongoing effort to demonstrate our value. Last year, 14% of our MET requests fell specifically into the bucket of alleviating interpersonal violence or toxic stress. When people apply for help and we assist with an immediate need, like the fence example, for example, or adaptive driving equipment, 2 other things often happen. Through the conversation involved, we often hear of other issues. Maybe in addition to the fence need, it turns out the family's kids are all sleeping in one bed. These conversations build over time, and we often witness adults with disabilities and families moving toward their long-term goals and dreams. In fact, our application specifically asks them about their dreams. And many people, the first time they ever are involved with us, they can't answer that question. They either leave it blank, or when the resource navigator asks them, they're just like, dreams, I don't know. I'm fighting this immediate fire. Just please help me with that. But eventually they come around.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could go over those 5 buckets again.
Sure. Housing, transportation, food insecurity, toxic stress, and interpersonal violence.
Thank you.
Sure. And we have a lot of overlap. Someone will come to us needing the fence built because the child's a runner. And lo and behold, it's a family that has just moved because they've gotten out of a domestic violence situation. There's overlap, but we generally will characterize each request in one of those buckets if there's a true fit. Sometimes we help with things like getting ready for a job, getting a uniform needed for a job, or a computer to apply for jobs. And those don't fit easily into those buckets. And in fact, I personally argue that employment should also be one of those social determinants of health that is emphasized, but I don't run DHHS. The second additional thing that happens, besides, meeting the immediate need that people come to us with, is that our application includes a section on what would you like to contribute for other families? And almost everyone checks something off. Their specific need at the moment is met. And meanwhile, they can pay it forward if they choose to by helping another individual or family with donated equipment or Spanish translations. We have all sorts of different categories. I think we have 10 that people can check off, and a lot of them will check off other. And we keep that data in our database, and we report on that, but we also report on when people actually do it. So there's offers, and then there's actually helping the other families. And it's really wonderful to see how regularly it happens. So there's no PowerPoint right now. It's just the picture of my daughter with a horse. Mostly it's just me talking, and we are going to move through some more slides, but not yet. Slow me down if you need to, or to interrupt with a question. So I look at respite from the lens of how can First and Families focus on and facilitate relationships over services, contribution opportunities for the people we help, and interests over Band-Aid fixes. So what do I mean by interests over Band-Aid fixes? Sometimes when I talk to families about more independent living, like their loved one moving out, even though they may, have the alphabet soup of labels. When I talk to them about dating and sexual relationships, working, supported decision-making, alternatives to guardianship, or any number of other ways that people can have the dignity of experience despite their challenges. Sometimes when I have these conversations, what I'll hear is, oh, wait a minute, hold on. You don't know my kid or brother or, uncle. You don't get how fill in the blank, disabled, nonverbal, hostile, severely impaired, extremely this or that he or she is. I'm going to share with you in a second a 7-minute video featuring a couple of people who came to us from backgrounds of trauma and crisis, extreme trauma and crisis. And they are now thriving, working in relationships. One of them is Pat, our board member, and the video doesn't talk about this, but she was left off at a large developmental institution when she was tiny, like 6, not that tiny, 6, enough to be greatly traumatized by that transition. And she lived there for many, many years until she fought her way out. She was also part of the eugenics program, against her will. But she pushed her way out. And Logan, you'll hear more about in the actual video. I want to ask you to just please ignore what sort of feels like a marketing aspect to this video. We won a big monetary award, and we used it to create this to help us get interest on our program Lifetime Connections, but that's not why I'm showing it to you. Okay, we can start the video.
I've learned so much that First in Families has taught me. That you don't give up. You continue to strive and you continue to fight for what you want. Until you fight and get what you want, who's gonna fight for you?
So the goal of Lifetime Connections is to move relationships beyond family members and staff people towards community members and friends. So to build relationships that are just based on personal connection and caring. One of the primary focuses in all network meetings is supportive decision making. Having the member kind of identify a challenging issue in their life and coming to a community for advice on how to approach that issue.
My name is Russ Chapman. My son Logan Chapman is a member of Lifetime Connections since 2011. Most of the programs that we were in just kind of gave up on him. With Logan's brain injury, he had a lot of anger issues. And the programs that he was with just weren't set up to be able to deal with that.
I have been there and I've seen people be put in straitjackets. I've seen people be locked in rooms. And I've had that happen to me.
We thought that, there really wasn't anything else that we could do. And that he was gonna spend the rest of his time just sitting around the house with nothing to get into.
I feel everyone has a right to get a chance to come out of the institution and try to live like a normal person.
My name is Janie. I'm 25 years old, and I've been with Foster Family 11 years. Which is impossible.
My name is Savia Carroll and I'm 24 years old and this is my home. And I've been with First in Families for about 2-3 years and I love it. Our network is can I call it a team?
Yeah.
A team of wonderful people that give us supports of like goals. Like budgeting and shopping and things like that to help us continue for those long-term goals, as in being more independent.
We've been having a lot of conversations, both in the planning meeting and then in the network meeting itself, about how as adults we make more friends. And that's a little difficult for someone that is very routine oriented and isn't able to drive. So that has to be planned and considered. The network is really able to do that, and by its very nature of existing, demonstrate the possible outcome of meeting new people.
So I like hip hop, fast music. I like Demi Lovato.
Me too.
I like Jessie J.
Yep.
I like Kelly Clarkson. I like Beyonce.
That's one thing that we have in common with each other, that we like music and we like to sing a lot.
I like to dance too.
Very loudly in the house. Very loudly.
one of the aims of the network is to get in a diversity of age experience, a diversity of ideas, to encourage our network members to think about the world the way they want to think about the world and interact with the world the way that they want to interact with the world.
I get to do the things that I've always wanted to do. Being independent is a great thing.
From my experience, the gains are small in the short term, but they're really large in the long term.
So one of the things I think that Lifetime Connections has done is they've worked with him on ways to calm himself down, how to control his anger. He works in one of the cafeterias at NC State. He's been there about 4 years now. Safe to say the whole time that he's been there, he hasn't had one outburst at all.
A couple years ago, we went.
He really loves being an ambassador for Lifetime Connections. You know, I've got a different perspective now for his future. I feel like as time goes on, he's going to meet more people. And these are all people that will help him make good, sound decisions, you know, even after I'm gone.
I can make my decisions. Don't try to make my decisions for me. Don't make them for me. I'm doing this because I want to see it open up more doors for other people with special needs to get in there and show them that they can do it. And I believe all people has equal rights.
Thank you, Nancy, for managing the video. And you can all hear me, right? Yep, okay. So thank you, GlaxoSmithKline, for the paying for the production of that video. And I gotta tell you, just as an aside, all those people, Logan and Savaya and Janie, they're all doing really well. Janie and Savaya regularly speak around the state on different things, but are about to celebrate their 6th quote anniversary of being housemates. And both of them had bad housemates experiences before living together. So it's worked out really well. In the case of Logan, I would like to say that it took a personal network willing to get to know him and figure out what made him tick, what his interests are, you know, how to connect him to those interests, looking beyond and around the anger issues or whatever was going on right at that time. And the video didn't say it, but the college cafeteria he works at came about because his network included a neighbor who worked there and introduced him. Logan had never worked before that, and his parents thought he probably never could because of his, you know, behaviors. We have one man we work with whose primary interest, his passion, is wide world of wrestling, WWW. So his network ensures that somebody hangs out with him who truly also likes to watch wrestling. They are out there, apparently. We don't go seeking, you know, a volunteer to work with a nervous, depressed man with autism. We look around for people who like wrestling, or horses, or swimming, or dining out, or dieting, or whatever is, you know, a spark for that person. We have truly witnessed that there is no one too disabled to be in relationship. When we can connect people to others with their interests, the need for formal respite care can go down immensely. Now, one thing I want to say as a caveat is that we're very careful when we're in meetings with system people, you know, the funders, the policy people, to not make it sound like what we're saying is, yeah, we don't need services because let's do all this natural support type stuff. Because that's what can get turned on its ear that way sometimes. So we're very careful to say we're talking about complementing formal services. My all-time favorite story demonstrating this idea that I've been talking about with relationships and interests and contribution came from a man named John McKnight. Some of you may know of his work, who trained us with his asset-based community development folks many years ago. Raymond is a man with many labels who doesn't speak. He has no services. And nobody could figure out what to do with him when his aging mom was struggling to keep him, keep him content, give him a life. A helping person needed to figure out what might be his interests, but it was just really, really hard. So day after day, she would spend some time, an hour or so, rocking with him on his front porch swings day after day for a few weeks. And after a couple of weeks, a police car went by and Raymond jumped up and down and got all excited. Long story short, and I know that this is kind of a weird story now in the context of our political situation, things going on now. This is from 15 years ago, but it still works, so bear with me. So long story short, the woman that was helping and Raymond made a visit to the police station, and she introduced Raymond to the officers on call, or they did. They chatted, they invited him back, and they offered him eventually, after the next visit, a volunteer job to hang out at the station a couple of times a week for several hours each time. So that in itself was very special because he was thrilled and he relished these visits to the police station. But then weeks later, when he was there, he wandered off. And Raymond was such a valued friend to these folks that an APB, all points bulletin, was put out immediately to all the squad cars to look for Raymond, and they found him, within minutes. Respite as a formal service, as a breather from caregiving, is certainly okay, but it's kind of a Band-Aid. Sometimes Band-Aids are necessary. At the beginning, I asked you if you ever feel like you need respite from yourself. Humans drive each other ballistic, including ourselves sometimes. If it's 3 a.m. and I can't sleep, some good golden milk turmeric tea with cinnamon and ginger, which you ought to try if you have sleep problems and you've never tried it. I can send the recipe later. It might knock me out. I get my sleep. It's good. But then in the morning, I realize, why'd that happen anyway? Maybe I need more exercise, or to get together with friends that like to play music too, like me, or to share more of my love of painting with my 2 grandchildren. We can pay to have a kind stranger come sit with someone, or send someone to a day program so mom can get out. We can do that. Or we can get an organization like mine or yours, or an organization you know and value, to connect that person with their passion, to find their passion. Let's face it, a lot of times people that we know, nobody quite knows really what makes them tick, to get a breather from whatever is tough for them. I think that we've made progress in the last century with getting people out of institutional settings of care, but we still have to envision our roles beyond services and fixing and caregiving. And we have some challenges right now because we have this Olmstead mandate that you probably are familiar with. It was a Supreme Court ruling 25 years ago that people like our board member, Pat, and others who have a significant disability, that the legal settlement was that they have the right to live in the regular community with supports, as long as there's one professional that can say, yeah, with supports, they can do it. And here we are still trying to build up enough supports in our system to not have families scared about this idea of moving, say, from a licensed group home into a regular apartment. You know, we have a lot of work to do. But another piece of it is building these natural supports, like I've been talking about. Were Raymond, the man who was rocking on the porch and had interest in police, were he and his mother getting respite from each other by his sitting around his front porch day in and day out? I'm sure somewhat, you know, I'm sure it was helpful. But by finding that link for him to his interest in the police, he is also contributing. He's contributing to their community. He's valued there. And he's safer, not because they're police, you know, and as I said, you know, this is an older story. We all know that police do not necessarily automatically make us safer in our communities. But he's safer because he's known by a group of human beings who care about him and who value his contribution to them by his very presence and interest in them. It makes them feel good. It's a win-win. I can't emphasize enough the value of contribution and how misguided it is to overemphasize safety over the risk of experience, the risk of relationships. Without risk, we make no mistakes. We may stay safe and lonely. Contribution can come in many forms. I'd like to tell you now about our newest project. It's called Quillo Connect, and it's an app. Most people use it on their phone, but it can also be used on a computer that contains 60-second videos made by and for adults with disabilities. The purpose is for these short, digestible videos to either inform, like provide concrete information, to inspire, or to connect people to one another. What has been the most exciting part about it for me has been inviting and working with people to make the videos. Our job at First and Families is to customize the app. The name is Quillo Connect, to customize the app for North Carolina. So it's a relatively new thing, and it was originally designed to for direct support professionals to connect with each other, but now it's completely different, and it's for adults with disabilities. And I could, you know, talk for an hour about that, or talk offline more about it, or in the Q&A. But our job is to customize it for North Carolina and make 50 or so videos for North Carolina with specific content. So some of these videos break down complex system or health-related ideas, like what is Medicaid? Or there's one on dehydration called "What Color is My Pee?" And it explains in very easy to understand language that, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but you know, you go use the bathroom, if it's dark yellow, maybe you need to drink more water. And it just talks about that without getting into even using the term dehydration, which can be really confusing. There are so many health, just so many things with health that the people we work with and our loved ones can understand. They just need it broken down a little more simply. But most of the micro videos you're about to see are made by adults with disabilities themselves. So we're going to show, they're only a minute, we're going to show like 5 of them. And I'm going to make a short comment after each one. So we are ready for Michael.
People are always talking about the benefits of meditation, but they rarely seem to tell you how you actually do it. So in this video, I'm going to introduce a method that I've been using that I found helpful. I've seen it work for people with autism and people with intrusive thoughts. I call it the bubble method. It's essentially training your brain to learn how to let things go. So it's really important to not get angry with yourself if you're not doing very well at keeping your mind clear. You'll get better with it as you keep trying it. So it's really simple. It's best if you're comfortable and just close your eyes and visualize a body of water or a tank of water, right? As thoughts into your mind, which they will, you just let them, put them in a little bubble and let that bubble float away. And you just keep trying to keep your mind clear. And that's it.
So Michael is really one of our stars. He got into this so much that he made us about 8 videos so far, and he just completed a outside of us peer support training. So he's a peer support professional. Now we're going to watch Tony.
My name is Tony Simpson, and I'm doing a tomato sandwich, and I love making tomato sandwiches all the time, and it's a wonderful thing. And I'm trying to get this mayonnaise to go. And I love the mayonnaise.
After the mayonnaise, what do you put on, Tony?
I put tomatoes, lettuce, and tomato.
So that was part 1. There's part 2. What I love about this one is I know Tony, and he's close to 80, and he's gone from living in a very segregated licensed setting to living with a bunch of people in a regular community. The tomatoes, he doesn't say here, but he grew them himself on their garden. And he's just got a pretty good life. And many of us don't think of people with disabilities as growing. I mean, we can't really envision what's going to happen to them when they get older. But he's living a pretty sweet life. And he contributes a lot to his immediate household. Yeah, it's unusual to see aging people in the community. So now we're going to watch Savaya, who you met before in the other video.
This is part 2 of transferring into a car, but this is from a low standpoint. And as you see from the first video of how I pull up to the car as close as possible to make sure my chair is set and ready to transfer. So here we go. So the same process as from the high standpoint. So the same, and then to transfer out, same way. And back in again. So there you go.
So we met this young lady when she was on the management team of one of our First in Families chapters in a rural area in North Carolina. And she, that management teams are volunteer groups of people with and without disabilities that help our local chapter staff, the paid staff, connect with both the needs and the resources in the community. And so because she was doing that, because she was out a little bit in the community, she was known by another staff person who knew of a roommate situation in Durham, which happened to be my daughter, but I didn't have anything to do with it at that point. And so the First in Families chapters are another way people can contribute. But Savayat she'd experienced a very, very rough start in life, and she was looking for a new life in a new town. I think we have one or two more, three more. The next one is Bonnie.
Because of love is child. You got that love. You got the power. Because God is a strength. And love is yourself. And you don't know what the power is. Because God is the power. Yes, it is yourself. It is the power of love. Yes, and nobody love. Yes, and nobody love. Take me to the swing, Papa. Yeah.
So that's Bonnie. And when I met Bonnie, she didn't speak to anybody. She just, she was very quiet, just scared, really scared. And now she really doesn't stop talking or singing. I mean, she's got a great community. She loves to dance, and she babysits small children that she lives with in a house. Okay, the next one is Cody.
A key part of managing other people is realizing that social scripts, while they aren't useless, they should just be a starting point. In real life, conversations can end up thousands, even millions of different ways. We should embrace it. We should not be my way or the highway. Instead, the attitude is, what do you think? What do you think about this idea? What do you think about what I just said? What do you think about the new Star Wars? When you let conversations be open-ended like that, that is when the other person will do most of the talking for you. They'll share their viewpoint, and then you can respond based on what they say, either just a yeah, or if you know what to say back, you can have a good back and forth conversation that will become a cherished memory. That is a key cheat code to adult conversations, is asking open-ended questions so the conversation can flow however it flows.
So I haven't personally met Cody, but he, you know, I know that he does all his videos with his role play of being a magician. And it is kind of, to me, it's kind of cool because it is like he is pretty magic with his wisdom. Next, we have Jason, and this is the last one of these that I'm sharing with you today.
When I was young, my folks said, Jason, you are the best. And they were right, I am the best, me and each of you are the best you, because we're each the only ones of us in the world. So with that, raise your right hand, raise your right pointer finger and say, I love you, right pointer finger, and point at yourself and say, I am the best. I am the best. I am the best. I am the best. Yes, you are. Have a brilliant day.
So everyone has a message, right? Everyone can have a message and something to give. Many people aren't asked, you know, that's the thing. And many people are seen for their labels first. So So all of these folks that you've seen were paid to make these videos. You know, we have grants and we pay people to make videos. They selected the topics, which is what's really amazing too, is because they come up with many interesting topics. And the thing is, the topic itself might not seem that interesting, but it's their interest, and so it comes across, right? The passion comes across, and that's what makes them giving so much. Contribution, I think, and engagement are I've seen to be a very good antidote to, you know, behaviors. Respite is usually sought because of, or often sought because of difficult behaviors, not always. Sometimes it's just pure old caregiving, you know, fatigue. So I hope that I've given you a new way of thinking about alternatives to respite as a service, but with the same end in mind. I think that was all I was going to share. I see that there are a lot of questions or comments about Quillo Connect. Before you download it, or I have to tell you, it is not free. It's the goal of our corporate partner, Quillo, who gets grants in different states with people, and maybe you can get one in Pennsylvania, is to get the formal service system people to pay the licenses. So we're trying to make it so valuable that people who aren't getting services and people that are can have the license paid, the very inexpensive licenses paid for by their system people. So that's what we're working on. And I didn't want to mislead anybody on that one. We offer it free to all of the people in North Carolina. So that's it. Do we have any questions or comments or anything anyone wants to share?
Betsy, I'm going to take down the slides. Okay.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Betsy. It's funny, I was going through it, like my head when there's a couple of things that you had said, and I'll make comment on those in a minute, but I want to ask any of our attendees if you have any questions for Betsy. If you could please place your questions in the Q&A area of the feature down. If you scroll on the bottom of your Zoom screen, I will get to those questions. And if you want to ask your question live, we can pop you up on the screen and you can ask Betsy your question. There was one that popped into the chat from Kathy Laws. Hi, Kathy. Have you seen this type of informal respite work when the need is for respite during a mental health crisis as an alternative to hospitalization?
Yes, I have. Actually, Logan, you know, without divulging too much privacy stuff, came to us with severe crisis happening several times a week. Of course, the approach has to be different, right? I mean, you're not going to have a conversation about what somebody's interests are if they're completely in a major crisis. But it's slower. So sort of like with Raymond and the police, in his case, it took, 2 weeks of several hours for him to even trust and be with the person he was with. And even then she couldn't figure it out. Well, I think it's similar with people with either severe and persistent mental illness or, whatever their crisis is. They have to have trust with somebody. And so that's the other angle, is with the personal network concept, or you can call it circle of support, similar idea. The point is that whoever's with that person, if there's, say, a primary caregiver or someone they live with, they've got a whole network of people to tap into that know that person. So being known builds trust, and it doesn't mean that they will be able to help that person de-escalate, but it can happen.
And how about for individuals, whether they have a intellectual disability or not?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, so we are working with Healthy Blue, which is the North Carolina version of Blue Cross Blue Shield for people with Medicaid. And the people that we support through that funding do not have intellectual developmental disabilities. And we don't do clinical mental health care. You know, that's not what we do. But we do still, where we can, build relationships with people. So, and that usually often, you know, I keep telling our resource navigators, who are the frontline staff that take the initial call from people, I always have to tell them, don't get too involved. We're not case managers, you know, but they're people. And so they do end up having long conversations and try to connect people to other people, or invite them to activities, or in the case of Lifetime Connections, you know, we have gatherings of families that are involved with this. With Quillo Connect, like we're building this group of kind of peer supports, right? So like the guy Michael with his bubble method of meditation, which works, by the way. I tried it after I saw that video. For me, it works. It's simple and it works. But he's a good guy to talk with somebody else that's got, as he puts it, intrusive thoughts, because he directly, you know, has been there. So I really believe in peer support. Yeah.
So I guess just sort of thinking through your presentation and just thinking about my own personal story, how did you sort of get this started with this sort of like this community of people who work with others who may be a little bit different than they are?
Yeah.
Because I know it's a huge struggle for me when my daughter was sick and she was going through everything that she was going through. I mean, just sort of to get out of the house was a difficult thing for me. You know, all of her care was dependent upon myself and her mother. And we sort of just were in the house all the time because she had a brain tumor that she was diagnosed with when she was about 14 months, and it just kind of progressed, and it got to a point where she couldn't do anything. She was sort of bedridden. So I'm wondering, like, how do you find all of those people who are willing to sort of help people in those types of situations?
Yes. So it gets back to the idea of, rather than going out and looking for someone that wants to get to know a beautiful little girl who has a brain tumor, we look at what the person is, what that little girl or boy or man or woman, what their interests are, and try to make a match. So one invitation, one person at a time. You know, if someone has a certain kind of, they're into the Wii. I don't even know if that still exists anymore, but bowling with the Wii.
Right.
And that's all they do every day. And the family comes to us, that it's not good for them. That's all they do. And then they go to bed, or and they're depressed. We find somebody that can come over and say, hey, I heard that you like the Wii. Will you play with me? And that's it. We don't try anything beyond that initially. It's about trying to build that bond. And then that person, by the way, has a neighbor or a friend that also likes to fix bikes, and say this person is expressed an interest in like wanting to do some mechanics or learn how to fix cars or something like that. Finding somebody else that can be all excited about that, or all excited about worldwide wrestling, which to me is, like, what? But there are people, right? And so the whole point really is in recognition of the fact that, like with your daughter, as you described, you were spinning so many plates, you can't think about going out and forming a network. It's like, we got to get through each day.
Right.
And that's the idea, is once there's a network, with this program, Lifetime Connections, the idea is that the network be lifelong. And that doesn't mean every member of the network is going to be the same in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, likely not, in the same way that all of us, our circles of friends, change over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as long as there can be a solid group of people and one moves and somebody else comes on that cares about that person, and can work through whatever they're dealing with at the time, whether it's acute illness or they've just got, accepted to go to some kind of college and they need to learn how to manage money or ride a bus. The network can kick in to help and bolster and be a safety net for the family members who are dealing with so much. I don't know if that helps.
No, it definitely does. Definitely does, because it gets to be, and I know there are a lot of people out there who sort of feel the same way as that, sort of that loneliness of, and it's like you said, because you're spinning so many plates, you're not really thinking about, you're just trying to get through the day, but it's like you start to feel like this is something that you're doing alone, and like you start to feel like I'm the only person in the world dealing with this. and so you meet other people and things, you start to open your perspective and you understand that there are others dealing like with similar things. How do they get through? But it's hard when you're in the middle of it to kind of think that broadly. So yes, it definitely was a helpful answer. Thank you.
Sure. Jamal, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Betsy, I saw a comment in the chat and it got me to thinking. And I think that most of us, regardless of our situation, have been through difficult times during the pandemic. And so many of us have needed to learn how to take care of ourselves, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So that said, can you share with us some of the ways that you take care of yourself in order to do the work that you do?
Sure. Well, early on, I decided when Janie, our daughter, was diagnosed at age 2, somehow I intuitively knew I had to take care of myself or I would never get through it. And that has never been a challenge for me, making time for my relationship with my husband. My personal interests, I take a Zoom once a week 90-minute modern dance class, which is my lifesaver. I walk my dog. I love my dog, spend a lot of time with my dog. I started painting a few years ago and I'm passionate about painting. And I've got 2 grandchildren. So, just this weekend, they came over and I try to spend really intentional time with them when they come over, because when I was raising children, we didn't have the competition of the devices, all the electronics. And that is just so crazy. So I am working with them to paint and to play like that. So for me, if I have what helps me stay grounded, besides taking care of my body, and is giving. I mean, is making a commitment. So the latest thing that I'm doing personally is I'm a member of a circle of welcome for an Afghan family that was airlifted out in August. And Durham is one of those. There's 50 cities in the US, I guess, that are like welcoming cities. That work is really feeding my soul. And it has nothing to do with disability, I thought, but it turns out one of the families has a 15-month-old with a rare metabolic disorder. So there you go. So I'm connecting them with First in Families. But yeah, I mean, I value, I have a sibling that just passed away a month ago of dementia, and I'm the youngest of 5, and that was a whammy. There is no dementia in our family up till now, and that really was a stressor and still is. I mean, but she's in peace now. But I just kept doing those same things in addition to visiting her and my brother-in-law and trying to offer help there. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. And I thank you for being so open and sharing that with us. Thank you.
Sure.
So we have sort of the same question. Verna and Lydia both asked in Q&A. They're wondering, how do you go about finding the volunteers or the people who have the same interest, who come over and, for example, play Wii or watch wrestling and all of those things? Do they reach out to you, or
no.
How do you go about that?
Yeah. So just FYI, as an aside, there's a book called A Good Life by Al Etmansky. I can put it in the chat. This program, Lifetime Connections, we cloned from some folks in Vancouver, Canada, called Planned Lifetime Advocacy Network. And the book, A Good Life, kind of explained, it has one whole chapter on setting up a network. Honest to goodness, the reason we got into this program was because I won that book at a game. I won it and I read it and I was like, wow, we got to try this. But the way we do it is the key, the secret sauce is we have a very, very, very part-time paid facilitator, we call it. The facilitator has to be an extrovert, has to be a people person that, you know, it feeds their soul to get to know people. And so when a family comes to us or an individual that needs a network, we make the best match. We introduce them to one of several facilitators we have. And if they click, then that person's job is to get to know the person at the circle, the center, you know, the person with the disability or whatever the issue is, just to get to know them for a few weeks, sit on the porch, so to speak. And then that's when they start thinking, who do I know? The facilitator themselves, because remember, they're the extrovert. They're like, okay, wait a minute. Would so-and-so? Well, maybe they'd like, okay, she says she likes dieting. This is a true case we had of somebody that that's what they expressed as their hobby, is dieting. So he connected with this online, what do you call it, meetup group that's all these ladies that diet, and they get together and diet, and got her to this group, and it led to weekly trips to the restaurants to have salads and all this healthy stuff, followed by ice cream, but chat, right? That the main thing was that it was social. And so the interest is like the inroad, right? The point is that because of the connection, then you get to know people. So we have facilitators, and that's their job. And then their other job is, once the network is humming, because we look at it as phases. So once there's a few people and they're starting to meet and they're starting to communicate together, and Quillo Connect, by the way, has a feature where you can also have a network being like connecting with each other and doing videos that don't have to get vetted through us. Like I did one on my daughter's medicine and how to get her strapped in her accessible van so that new incoming people can help make that happen without me going over and showing them each time. But anyway, once a network is humming, then the facilitator, their only role is to just check in, like to have meetings once a month or every other month, just make sure everybody's talking and knows what the challenges are, what's going on, what the person needs, and to keep notes and stuff. It's hard, I will say, for people with traumatic brain injury. We got a lot of networks for folks with TBI, but because some of them have short-term memory issues, you know, you'll set up a meeting, or so-and-so is going to come over and take you out for a run, but they forget about it. And so the person arrives, it's like, oh boy, all right, we'll try again next week, you know. So there's individual challenges. Every single network is different. But that paid facilitator helps. And by part-time, I mean really like 8 hours a month at most. That's, yeah.
So how do you sustain a program such as this? I've heard a little bit about how you build it. How do you sustain it?
Yeah. So like every good nonprofit, we're always hustling for money in different places. We got approached with this, so Lifetime Connections is just one of our programs, right? The main is the bread and butter. That program is that we meet the immediate needs. But are you talking specifically about Lifetime Connections?
Yeah.
So it is a membership private pay program. So we have families that pay for that very, very part-time facilitator.
Okay.
We have like a mini foundation that we've set up to take donations to earmark them towards that for families that can't pay. But generally, a family will tell us how many hours a month they can handle at $40 an hour. And typical is like, look, whatever y'all can do for 4 hours a month, we will find a way to make that work, $160. And we never go over, so there's never sticker shock surprises. So we do what we can. And the thing is, it really works with that little amount of money if you pick the right facilitator. Now, I know that's not a little bit amount of money to everybody, but that's why we're setting up we've built up the pot of money to help those that can't. But, you know, we've gotten grants before to offer this for free, and the families to whom there has not been at least a small amount of payment haven't worked as well. And I don't know why that is exactly, but I do know that for us, that's a fact.
Thank you. Laura wanted you to repeat the title of the book and the author.
Sure, I'll put it in the chat. A Good Life by Al Etmansky. Type answer. Oh, it looks like I can't actually. Oh, that's Q&A. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions for Betsy?
I'll put my email again in the chat also.
Thank you. I think it's it's one of those things. I was talking to Nancy just about respite care and how, people think of it and trying to think of out of the box ways, because it's like I said, when you're in the middle of things, you don't really think about a lot. You think about everything that could go wrong if you sort of had somebody come into your home to help you with some of those things. But I really feel like it's needed because it's like I said, everybody, I know when people hear respite care, they automatically think about, well, how do you pay for it and all of those things. But there are things and there are people out there who will do things to help. And it's just like you said about sort of building that community approach sort of to it to help people meet, whatever the need is. And that need doesn't have to be long-term, but if it can bring some light to someone's life who needs the respite, I think it's a great thing to do. So thinking about it out of the box and building those relationships and finding those connections, and not specifically looking for somebody who is depressed and trying to find somebody to help that, but to help that interest so that they can form that connection, and that relationship is a great way to kind of go about it. It's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, and that's the big main point of what I was trying to share. And the other side of the person being connected with interests and so forth is that what I was trying to say with, do you ever need respite from yourself? It's like for people to get out of their own little miserable whatever,
Right.
I'm speaking for myself, and to see the world is bigger. And if you're out there doing something fun with somebody that shares an interest, it can take the heat off your own wheels turning. And so that's respite, that's respite from whatever the issue is.
Yeah, definitely.
Jamal and I were talking about this earlier, and I always learn things from Jamal. And he said to me, well, this is not a subject that you will frequently hear discussed. And I said, what do you mean? And suddenly I realized that what we are doing here today, Betsy, is maybe the first time anybody's ever heard a conversation like this around the subject of respite. And because it has that negativity of, I'm not even going to bother, it's going to cost money, we don't have the money, and others, Jamal, if you wanted to add to what I'm saying. And so I got excited because I felt as if having you today was an opportunity to start that conversation, to get people thinking. And also I would like to take this time to say, I have had the opportunity to work with Betsy, to know Betsy for more than 20 years. I knew her when she was first starting. She hired me as a consultant early on. And it has always been a joyous occasion for me to work with Betsy and to see what they're accomplishing and what they're doing, and her tenaciousness and determination to get past whatever the issue is while keeping this balance. And I also know more things personal about Betsy, which it's up to her to tell her story, not me. But I know what a good and generous person she is, and that basis is what I believe we need, all of us, to be successful in our lives. And the other part of that is community. And Jamal and I, if we were going to have a common theme this year, it was community. That we've learned, I think a lot of us from the pandemic, is that without a community, your life is really poor. And so all of those things, I just said a lot of things there at one time. And I don't think there was a question, but I am still just puzzled or amazed, or whatever the word is, that this is a subject that people haven't been discussing, respite care.
Yeah, I told Nancy that it's one of those things that you have to kind of talk about to kind of just get it off the ground. You have to start somewhere, you know what I mean? And I think this is a great place to start because it gives people ideas on what's possible outside of, respite care that you need to pay for and things of that nature. So I think this was a great way to sort of help address that need.
And an amazing speaker.
Oh, well, thank you, Nancy. You're my cheerleader.
We've said before that everyone needs a Nancy in her.
Yes. Well, Nancy was the first one that ever, told me that we needed to pay attention to having accessible websites. And she was a true visionary around that way back. Still is. People are just not, I don't know. They don't pay enough attention to that in my book. But
truly, yeah, she still talks about that a lot.
Well, good. Yeah.
All right.
There's, there's that concept of visitability that started
Yes,
years
yes.
ago, and it's caught on in certain neighborhoods where I live,
Yeah.
which is wonderful that, people have ramps and so forth just to have others come in.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying people can only go where they can get in,
Right. Right. And I think it was in Virginia where it started. It's probably at least 30 years ago. But those are just little pockets, and they are basically for people with disabilities. And the point of visitability is that everybody should be able to attend,
Yes.
whether it's getting into a restaurant or coming into your home, and that we should not build barriers automatically. And and now that I am older and have had issues with my knees and I can't climb those big steps anymore, and I get to a place where that's the only thing that's available to me, it frustrates me to know that over 30 years ago, the ADA was signed. Where the hell are you all doing?
I know.
And I get frustrated. But hopefully in another generation or two, it'll be addressed regularly.
Yes.
Well, we've reached about that time, and there aren't any more questions coming in through the Q&A. So, Betsy, we want to thank you for a great presentation and shedding light on the topic that I think we should definitely talk more about and bring awareness to. So, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. Wish I could get to know all those people out in cyberspace. Thank you, Nancy and Jamal, and all of you for listening and participating.
We really appreciate it. One of the things too that I've tried to do in the past couple of years doing this work is Pennsylvania doesn't always have the answer, and let me show you somebody who does. And so I think that you've been able to help us in that way. And I saw a couple of comments in the chat, and I hope that this builds similar types of opportunities in Pennsylvania. And I thank you for that. I want to say too that our next presentation is titled Unpacking Poverty, the intersection of financial insecurity, race, and mental health in youth. Bridget Hutchings is our speaker, and she's doing some amazing work. She was in our area up here. She's now in Atlanta. And we'd love to have you join us. So Betsy, did you have anything to say? I'm going to hang on for a few minutes for people to get the links that they need, but did you have anything else that you'd like to say to us before you push off?
No, just keep open to it. The people are so important, and we all have so much potential. Everyone's capable of relationship. So, and feel free to email me. Happy to have anybody pick my brains about whatever, with, how we do this. We're like everybody else. We just are figuring things out as we go, and some things work, and we move on and build on the things that work. So thank you.
Thank you again, Betsy, for your generosity.
Sure. Bye.
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 I think we're good.
Great.
Great job today, Jamal.
Same. Have a great day, everyone.
High five. Thank you all for coming.
Bye-bye.